Hello ladies and gentlemen, Nick here. Welcome to part 2 of my two-part top 20 classic Doctor Who stories ranking. So basically, like part 1, this is the continuation of my ranking of my top 20 Doctor Who stories. For more information, please check out the start of that video if you haven't already, as well as for honourable mentions. But now we'll be taking a look at my 10 favourite classic Doctor Who stories. So let's get down to it, and before I start, across both videos there are episodes from stories from each of the first 7 Doctors, and just to let you know, the first and third Doctors won't be having stories in this part of the list, but please check out the first part for their best episodes. But we will be having episodes from the stories from the 2nd, 4th, 5th, 6th and 7th Doctors in this part. The last part didn't have any from 6. He's only got 1. Last part had 1, 2, 3, 4 and 7. This time it's 2, 4, 5, 6, 7. So without further ado, continuing the list with number 10. Top 10 territory. This story is, my number 10 choice, is one of the most popular stories of the entire show, not just the classic series. It's many people's favourite, or one of their favourites, and I can totally see why. The Caves of Androzani, Season 21, Doctor 5, 1984. Okay, so we've got our first 5th Doctor story of this ranking. Caves of Androzani is what is... This and Genesis of the Daleks are in contestant between the two of them. Of greatest show of all, greatest story of all time, and yeah, this one's a great story. It sees the 5th Doctor at his best, Peter Davison's best performance, as all he wants to do is save his friend Perry, who he's only known for a short while. Well, in the TV canon, if you put the Big Finish audios into play, it seems like they've been friends for years. But I suppose that adds a bit of a kind of a connection between the two of them. So you could look at it either way, but the Doctor has to save his friend, and that's all he cares about, but he's caught up in this war between these people, which is basically not over anything good. It's over drugs, basically, which they could have easily avoided altogether by just giving Shaz and Jack, who's got all of this drug thing, Spectrox, Spectrox something. The raw stuff is poisonous, which is what the Doctor and Perry have, but the filtered stuff, I guess, is sort of like a drug or something. And Jack has all of it, and he will give it to the citizens of the people of Androzani Minor if they give him the head of their leader Morbius, not leader, the politician Morbius. And so obviously they go to war with him because they don't want to do that, even though Morbius more than deserves having his head cut off. For reasons we see throughout the story, Morbius is a great villain. No, it's not Morbius. Morgus. He has a similar name to Morbius from The Brain of Morbius. It is a Robert Holmes story after all. But throughout the story, the Doctor's just all he wants to do is save his friend, and that's really all that matters for him, which gives us a great, exciting story for the Doctor and Shara Jack at this point as well, because he likes Perry too, to try and save her from the Spectrox. And ultimately, this is the Doctor's most heroic 2 hours, hour and 40 minutes, as the 5th Doctor basically sacrifices himself to save Perry, find a cure for Perry, and then, only having enough for her, he gives it to her and awaits almost certain death until he's reminded by his friends and by the Master to continue existing. And this is probably the best regeneration story of the entire show, after Bad Wolf and The Parting of the Ways. But like the 11th Hour being my favourite post-regeneration story, those two are new series. So for the classic series, we've got Spearhead from Space and the case of Androzani, spearhead for post-regeneration, case for actual regeneration, and just an absolute fantastic ride of an adventure. The case of Androzani is indeed one of Doctor Who's absolute greatest stories. But in my ranking, we've got, at least for the classic stories, we've got 9 more to go and a couple of new series in the overall. So, moving on to number 9. Now that we've talked about the Fifth Doctor's final story, let's talk about another one of his stories from earlier on, this time from season 19. Now, the Fifth Doctor didn't have the best of starts of Doctors compared to his predecessors, and to a lesser extent his successors when it came to successive stories after the post-regeneration one. But once we got to Eric Sayward's The Visitation, things started to get rolling a bit more for Peter Davison. I mean, say what you like about the Colin Baker and Sylvester McCoy eras, but at least they started to get a bit more rolling after their post-regeneration stories. Didn't take them too long. The same for second, third and fourth. In fact, for their ones, their post-regeneration stories were very good, and the firsts, whilst it was a slow start, it was always really good. But fives, I think he's had the biggest struggle to get going post-regeneration in terms of stories, in terms of not necessarily story quality for all of the stories, but I think he just took the longest to have a pretty good story after the regeneration. I mean, Castrovalve is okay. Fall to Doomsday is not that great either, and Kinder I can't stand. I know people like that one, but I can't stand that. But his next story, The Visitation, was very good, and into Eric Sayward, the script editor for from this point onwards, or for early Fifth Doctor to the end of Sixth Doctor. And then we got Black Orchid, which was very good. But the penultimate story of season 19 is another classic. This story is absolutely amazing. And it saw the return of a foe that we hadn't seen for a good couple of years, and their last story had not been a very good one in the early Tom Baker era. The Cybermen returned in one of their best stories of all time. Number 9 is indeed Earthshock from season 19 with the Fifth Doctor, 1982. Earthshock is amazing. This story is brilliant, even though there isn't a huge amount of stuff going in the middle, or even at the start, but it's still really great, building the tension, building the threat, and just all-around great storytelling, and just absolutely brilliant. And the final episode is very emotional, depending on whether you like Adric or not. I thought he was alright. I didn't get upset when he died, but it is quite a shocking death. Possibly the most shocking death of the show? Maybe. Not the saddest departure, but possibly the most shocking of the companion deaths. And even before that, it had such a great story, great interactions. This was actually my second Fifth Doctor story I saw after the Five Doctors, and I found the TARDIS crew to still be very engaging without having seen the previous 6 stories they were in. Fifth Doctor, Tegan, Nyssa, and Adric. Dynamic between the 4 of them are really great, and that's something that's, again, in Visitation especially, and also in Black Orchid. Again, earlier on, it hadn't really cemented itself too much, probably because Nyssa wasn't supposed to be in Kinder, but well. But still, a great story, and I loved the character interactions between them, and also the supporting cast were also really great. Okay, moving on to number 8. This story is back in season 6. This is my favourite of the season 6 stories, and one of my favourite Second Doctor stories. And it's a really imaginative and creative adventure. The Mind Robber from season 6, Doctor 2, 1968. This is a really fun and really imaginative story. Think the Celestial Toymaker, but without the Celestial Toymaker, and the Doctor is just as involved with the games happening in the land of fiction as much as the companions are. After an episode that had to be quickly written in by Derek Sherwin, he wasn't producer yet, script editor Derek Sherwin. He would produce the War Games and Spearhead from Space. but he had to write in this extra episode to fill that because they cut an episode from The Dominators, and The Mind Robbers was made from 4 episodes to 5 episodes to fill an episode gap, but they cut the story down by 5 minutes. And also to compensate with that, Derek Sherwin wrote a bonus episode at the start of The Mind Robber before getting into the story proper. But episode 1 acts almost like a prologue to the actual story, which is a really great and really imaginative story and had some really great stuff. It's also great to see the Doctor, Jamie and Zoe's interactions with each other throughout the story, and it was even fun to have another guy come in to play Jamie when Fraser Hines got chickenpox and had to get out of production for a bit. It's a really great story and highly enjoyable. And the villain is the Master, not the Master, but someone calling himself the Master, but it's not the Time Lord, the Master, it's the Master of the Land of Fiction. My only disappointment is we don't actually see him get home. They get back in the TARDIS and it forms its shape again after exploding at the end of part 1. But in the invasion we see them, they're alright, but we don't see what happened to the guy who had been forced to become the Master of the Land of Fiction. Also, Zoe screaming. Ow, I thought Victoria's screamings were annoying. But on the whole, The Mind Robber is a fantastic story and one of the best of the Patrick Troughton era, and indeed one of the best of the 1960s. Right, moving on to number 7. This one is probably going to be my most controversial choice of this list, as this story is a story that I don't think would be on many people's top 10 or top 20 ranking lists. But for me, the one and only 6th Doctor story on this list is my number 7 choice. I honestly love this story. I know it's not a very popular opinion, and I know it's not a very popular story, but I love my number 7 choice. Attack of the Cybermen from season 22 with the 6th Doctor, 1985. Yeah, I've made no secret that I've loved this story. I mean, I know this is going to be the most controversial opinion of this list, but I can't help it. Attack of the Cybermen is one of my all-time favourite stories. It might not be in the top 10 overall anymore, but it's certainly it certainly would have been beforehand, and it's definitely it might just scrape the top 10, if not top 11 or 12. But it's a fantastic adventure. I will say the music is fucking annoying, and apart from the music cues from Earthshock. And Colin Baker is still getting into the role, and it's still a little into Twin Dilemma territory with his character to start with, but I suppose we've got to have to get used to that for the TV stories. But he is mellowing down a little bit. He's getting more likeable, and there's even the excuse that his brain's still a bit mashed up after the regeneration. And also Nicola Bryant as Perry. Her performance is a bit of a step down after her previous 2 stories. Yes, I'm including Twin Dynamo, but I still think she's really good. The story of the Cryons is pretty good. The Cybermen are great, and I also love the return of Lytton from Resurrection of the Daleks. And on the whole, this story is just one that I just personally love and enjoy and find so easy to watch. It's a thrill of adventure, and easily the 6th Doctor's era, well, after the worst story of his era, we came with, in my opinion, the best. Although I know a lot of people prefer Vengeance on Varos and the 2 Doctors. Don't worry, those are 2 of his best as well. But for me, Attack of the Cybermen takes top-tier territory for me, and it's, in my opinion, the best 6th Doctor on-screen story. Moving on to number 6. Now, this one will be the least controversial opinion of this list, apart from the fact it's only 6th, not top 5 or top 1. Okay, so it might have a bit of controversy then, because it's not top 5. But number 6 is the most popular Doctor Who story of all time. It's widely considered the best by most fans. If it's not Caves of Androzani, it's this story. And to consider it's only the 4th story of its respective Doctor, that's a massive achievement. I mean, yeah, you got Spearhead and Space and Inferno. They were the 1st and 4th of the 3rd Doctors. But considering you had this story tops those quite a bit, and considering you've got this story this early in this Doctor's era, and it's quite a mature story as well. Very mature, very dark, a bit horrific. This story did take me a while till I actually loved it as much as lots of other people. I did like it, but I did find it very overrated before, but upon the viewing, I loved it. I mean, maybe not enough to push it to best of the season, best of the year, etc. lists, but certainly a deservingly well-regarded story, even if I think there are some that do deserve having a bit more love and attention now and again. My number 6 choice is, of course, the masterpiece known only as Genesis of the Daleks, from Season 12 with the 4th Doctor, 1975. Yep, Genesis of the Daleks. I don't think this is top 5 territory, but I do think it's one of the best stories of the classic series. I think it's a masterpiece in storytelling. At least I did once I came round a bit more to how everybody else saw it. Well, almost everybody else. But I didn't used to love it as much, but upon the viewing for the review, yeah, totally. But it's still great, still really amazing. The fact that it's a very mature story this early in the 4th Doctor's run is pretty cool, considering after we had the robot, which is pretty much King Kong for kids, Ark in Space, which is basically kid-friendly alien prototype, and the Sontaran Experiment, which was a nice, fun return for the Sontarans. But then everything gets a bit darker and more mature with Genesis of the Daleks, possibly one of the most darkest and mature stories of the show as well, as it deals with war and Nazism. Remember, the Daleks were inspired by the Nazis. And they say Doctor Who wasn't political before 2017. What was Terry Nation thinking about having World War II parallels? I mean, what an idiot. Politics shouldn't be in Doctor Who. Silly Terry Nation. Shh. Don't say that. Terry Nation's allowed to write whatever he likes. It's his story. Yeah, Doctor Who has always been political. Accept it. As the 10th Doctor said in The Girl in the Fireplace, I'm not winding you up. So, yeah, Genesis, fantastic story, does kind of drag a little in the middle, and also when I watched Troby's Dalek December video, he does mention how much of a sausage fest this is. There's only 2 female characters in this, and this seemed to be a thing for Terry Nation stories that I picked up on when watching them. And to quote Troby, I can't remember the character's name, but the girl File, she must be very popular. As someone who believes in representation and diversity and equality, I know that's not everybody, but as someone who does, without having to force it down people's throats, I think they should have had a few more female characters in here, maybe a few more female scientists or a few female characters, but never mind. To be honest, we actually don't really see much of the Fal or Khalid lifestyles outside of the science bunkers or the politician areas. That could have been something to explore. Oh well, we've got the iDavros audio series, so there's that. But anyway, but still, Genesis, still a great story and really enjoyable, really great stuff. Moving on to number 5. This story. Don't forget to click below to subscribe to the official Nicholas Payne Retro YouTube channel. So there's the 3rd Doctor won't be appearing on this list, but you can check out. And there were just did it have to say it had 7? It had 2. It had 4. It had. It didn't have 5. 5's in this one. So, with that being said, on to the list, starting with, continuing the list, I should say. As all he has to do, when that's, the big finish, but that like the 11th hour, the case of Androzani is one of Doctor Who's absolutely great, but for my top 20 this story is absolutely amazing, and it's cemented. And yeah, the Cybermen returned in probably because Nyssa wasn't supposed to be in the earliest. Probably because Nyssa wasn't supposed to be in more than. Probably because Nyssa wasn't supposed to have stayed on after Castrovalva, but oh well. But yeah, moving on to number 8. Number 8, we go back to another, and in order to answer the mind drop, it was very good, and it was. But anyway, on the whole, the mind of. Right, moving on to my number 7. For goodness sake, phone open. That I love my number 7 choice, not number 6 just yet. But the rest of it, what is best overall? Well, to be honest, I think I might put Holy Terror over this. To be honest, I won't talk about audios. This story is pretty much. It did take me a few. But certainly a very highly regarded story, in my opinion, from season 12, with the 4th, as it deals with war, Nazism, well, yeah, as it did, the politics now shouldn't be in Doctor Who, but politics shouldn't be in Doctor Who. So, yeah, Terry Nation was talking politics before politics were even a complaint by people. As the 10th Doctor says, I'm not winding you up. There is a good point about how this story is a bit of a sausage fair. He does mention how this much of a story is a bit of a sausage fair. On the... Oh, well, we've got Davros, so there's always...